guys, welcome back. It's heel time. So, possibly one of the most enjoyable parts of the creation of the Spanish guitar, in my opinion, is the carving of the heel. It's probably the most organic and open-ended set of curves that you're gonna create for yourselves. Most of the things are relatively strict from the point of view of angles and bits and pieces. So we're gonna have a little look at how I go about carving this traditional Spanish heel. You'll also note that most of the other dimensions have started to happen on this neck. Obviously, it's very much easier to work on a piece of wood like this rather than when it's attached to the body, and you run the risk of damaging the sides, etc., especially when you're working close into this part here. So yeah, let's have a look. Great stuff. So, cutting the heel. I'll kind of roughly tell you the way that I do this, and indeed you may well discover that for you other things work just as well, but I'm relatively organic in the way that I work, and tend to use the tools that my mum and dad gave me in order to just feel when things are right, and indeed if they feel right and look right, they inevitably probably are. First thing I've done is I've used a template. This is an old truss rod cover to create a symmetrical triangular shape on the top. Mark that in, obviously, and that's going to be my guidelines, and then quite simply I'm going to hack the bejesus out of this until it looks guitar-like or heel-like. So you'll notice also that the side of the heel is kind of almost like bottle shaped. It kind of goes relatively flat and then bellies out, makes a curve, and then returns on itself to the point where it meets the fretboard. So I'm kind of mindful of that curve as well. And this is relatively open-ended, in as much as long as there's enough meat there, you can take it where you want to take it. Really, you can have a big chunky heel or a very refined one. Yeah, let's crack on and see what comes out. Okay, so that's about as far as I'm going to take this bit for just a moment. I don't know if you can see it there, but effectively what I've done is literally the first kind of 5-10 mil of the side of it, I faceted. So there's a line which is running down, bellying out, and coming round. Obviously that will be fine-tuned with rasps and files and sandpaper and more chiseling a bit later, but just the basic curve. And what I'm going to do now is start to create the second facet. So that goes straight down, the next one's going to come along at a slight angle to it, all following the line of this curve, and also bringing it round as I go towards the midline of the heel, which incidentally I'm going to mark on now just to give me a ready reckoner as to how I'm getting on with it. So I've rough carved this with the chisel, and as I said, I kind of selected facets either side, got that line in first, and then gradually started bringing it round towards the midline of the heel. And from this point on now, I've got my trusty rasp file, round rasp file, and effectively all I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that curve round and keep bringing it round until we get to that centre line there. And it's an organic shape at the end of the day. And if you think about back in the day when this was made hundreds of years ago, it would have kind of followed the curves that would naturally occur when you were rubbing with sandpaper and various blades and rasps and files and what have you. So as I say, it's an organic type shape, and just feel it out and use your fingertips to find the symmetry. At the end of the day, these are the finest tools available to mankind, the ones that your mum and dad gave you. Much more sensitive than anything you can buy in a shop. So again, just following that curve and progressively taking high spots off and bringing it round into the centre line, following the curve. And every now and again, I'll stand down at the headstock end, eyeball the heel from the midline, looking down, and just make sure that if it looks right, it probably is. And as I say, use your fingertips, they'll let you know when things are ready. So now I'm getting close to the line. I'm looking down through the centre line and just gradually bringing that line in. Once I've achieved these two facets meeting that centre line, then we can start working with sandpaper and just tidying it up. Incidentally, if you are using one of these rasps, a really good idea is to, once you've done one side, you'll feel which direction the wood likes to be carved in. Wood will always tell you the direction which it wants to be carved, because it will be easy to carve it in that direction. So down on that side works for me. And then I'm going to turn the file the other way round, and it should meet exactly the same way, but it's supposed to going down and now coming up, and we're rotating the file in the other direction, and it will it'll achieve exactly the same kind of joy. So I'm going to do this until that line disappears, and I'm gradually bringing both sides round at the same rate and keeping that seam either side the same thickness. Again, following the contours, and we should be pretty much bang on the money. And again, this is a handmade guitar, so there will be sort of organic differences. It's made by hand and by eye. If you want one that's perfect, then go and buy one that's made on a computer. You will notice I've cut a lot of the meat away from this section here, effectively right in the middle of the guitar at the point where the heel joins the flat of the neck. I cut down with a saw, which gave me a line there which I can see, which is the depth that I want. Obviously from that point it will transition away, so as long as I keep that bit flat, then the rest of it can be worked a little bit later. So this now is 60 grit paper, about as rough as it gets. It probably isn't as rough as I've got. So now the fingers come into play again, and we effectively rub it with this until we're happy. And contrary to all the teachings of following the grain with sandpaper, which obviously is a good idea, at this point this is still technically carving, still a shaping process. So I'm going against the grain and creating scratches. I'm not overly worried. Because obviously the finer grit sandpapers and scrapers are going to come into play, and it will take all those working scratches out. as we refine it. Again, still part of the shaping process.